The SpiritFlow channel is proud to present Spirituality, the very beginning of the journey. A book by Vasco Vieira. Narration by Vasco Vieira. Introduction. Welcome to this journey where each page is an invitation to discover your true self and the essence of the universe that surrounds you. This book was written for all those who feel an inner calling, a restlessness in the heart, or a curiosity about spirituality. Perhaps you have already questioned the purpose of life, the reason for certain experiences, or simply the connection between all things. If so, know that you are in the right place. This is not a book of rules or dogmas, nor does it seek to impose absolute truths. It is a guide, a travel companion intended for those who wish to explore the spiritual path from where they are. It doesn't matter what your background is, your beliefs, or even the absence of them. What matters is your willingness to open your mind and heart, leaving behind old patterns that no longer serve you, and allowing yourself to experience new possibilities of being and living. Each step on this journey will be unique. Throughout this book, you will find practical reflections and inspirations that will help you establish a solid foundation for your journey. The spiritual path is above all personal and non-transferable, and it is up to you to walk your own steps at your own pace. May this book be a light on your path, helping you realize that although the journey is individual, we are never truly alone, for we are all part of a whole, connected by invisible threads of love, energy, and purpose. So get ready to open new doors, ask deep questions, and above all, find the answers that already reside within you. The journey begins now. Welcome to spirituality, the beginning of a new way of living. Chapter 1. 1. The origin of the word spirituality. The word spirituality derives from the Latin spiritualitas, which in turn has its roots in spiritus. The term spiritus means breath, respiration, or vital breath, referring to the idea of an animating principle or the essence of life. This concept is deeply connected to ancient beliefs, where the breath of life was considered the link between the physical and the divine. In early Christian tradition, especially in the Latin texts of the Church, the word spiritualitas was used to describe a life guided by the Holy Spirit, in contrast to an existence dominated by carnal or material pleasures often referred to as carnalitas. Thus, spiritualitas represented a pursuit of a higher ideal, centered on moral values, virtues, and communion with God. This view was central in medieval theology, influencing the way the concept of spirituality was understood throughout the centuries. However, spirituality is not exclusive to Christianity. Cultures and traditions around the world have developed similar ideas, each with their own terms to express the concept of connection with the transcendent. In Sanskrit, for example, Atman refers to the spiritual self or soul, while in ancient Greek, pneuma also meant breath or spirit. These similarities show how different civilizations recognize the existence of something beyond the tangible. Over time, the meaning of spirituality evolved and became detached from strictly religious structures. During the Enlightenment, for example, many thinkers began to explore spirituality as a personal experience of transcendence that did not necessarily require religious dogmas. This movement marked an opening to broader interpretations, such as connection with nature, self-knowledge, and the search for meaning in life. In the contemporary world, spirituality has become a broad term, ranging from traditional religious practices to secular approaches. It can be experienced through meditation, the practice of mindfulness, introspection, or even in the search for purpose and meaning in daily activities. This universality reflects its profound origin, the idea that human beings seek to understand something greater than themselves, something that nourishes the soul, the spirit, or the very breath of life. Therefore, the word spirituality carries within itself the essence of that which connects us to the invisible, the immaterial, and the sublime, being, since its very roots, an expression of the human quest for transcendence and inner harmony. Scientific studies confirm that people with a consistent spiritual or religious practice tend to have greater emotional resilience, lower rates of depression and anxiety, and even longer lives. These benefits, although they do not prove the existence of divine or transcendent forces, show that spiritual practices can be a valuable resource for human well-being. Scientific findings that point to spirituality. Although science is not meant to prove spiritual beliefs, some findings reinforce the idea that spiritual experiences have real foundations even if they are not fully understood. The experience of unity or transcendence, which many people report during deep meditations or near-death experiences, has been investigated from a scientific perspective. Studies using EEG and fMRI have shown that these experiences are associated with specific changes in brain activity, including a reduction in activity in the default mode network, which is the part of the brain responsible for the sense of individuality. Near-death experiences are another field where science and spirituality intersect. Although skeptics argue that these experiences can be explained as the result of chemical changes in the brain during critical moments, the conscious accounts from people around the world of bright lights, sensations of peace, and encounters with deceased loved ones raise questions about the possibility of a dimension of consciousness that goes beyond the physical body. Quantum physics, in turn, has raised fundamental questions about the nature of reality that have spiritual implications. The idea that the observer influences the behavior of subatomic particles, for example, suggests that consciousness may play a fundamental role in the structure of the universe. This resonates with spiritual traditions that emphasize the power of thought and intention. There are fundamental points of divergence. Despite these convergences, there are also significant differences that keep science and spirituality in separate fields. One of the main divergences is methodology. Science is based on empiricism, the scientific method, and the verification of hypotheses through replicable experiments. Spirituality, on the other hand, is deeply subjective and often relies on intuition, faith, and personal experience, elements that cannot be easily quantified or replicated. Another point of tension is the question of metaphysics. Science operates within the domain of naturalism, that is, it seeks to explain the universe without resorting to supernatural entities. Spirituality, however, often presupposes the existence of realities that are beyond the reach of the senses or scientific instruments, such as souls, reincarnation, spirits, or a transcendent God. For many scientists, these ideas are considered unscientific because they cannot be tested or falsified. The origin of the universe is another point of debate. While science seeks to explain the creation of the cosmos through theories such as the Big Bang and the evolution of galaxies, spirituality often introduces the idea of a creative force or divine purpose. Although some scientists, like Einstein, have spoken of a cosmic religious feeling, many modern scientists reject the idea that the universe has a conscious purpose. Points that continue to divide. One of the most persistent challenges in the dialogue between science and spirituality is the question of consciousness. Although science has made significant advances in understanding the brain, the question of what consciousness is remains without a definitive answer. Some spiritual traditions argue that consciousness is fundamental and primary, a universal force that creates and sustains reality. Science, on the other hand, generally sees it as a byproduct of neural activity. This philosophical difference is one of the greatest barriers to reconciliation between the two fields. Death and what happens after it is another central dividing point. For science, death is the end of biological functioning and, by extension, of consciousness. For many spiritual traditions, death is merely a transition, and consciousness persists in some way, whether in another dimension, in a cycle of reincarnations, or in a state of unity with the divine. Paths toward dialogue. Despite these differences, there are increasing efforts to build bridges between science and spirituality. Institutions and researchers have been exploring areas such as transpersonal psychology, neurotheology, and integrative medicine to investigate how spiritual practices can be understood and applied scientifically. This approach does not seek to validate spirituality through science, but rather to find ways to integrate both for the benefit of humanity. Spirituality and science, therefore, do not need to be seen as adversaries. Both offer valuable perspectives on reality and can complement each other when addressing fundamental questions of existence. While science seeks to explain the how, spirituality often focuses on the why. Together, they can help create a broader and richer view of the universe and humanity's place within it. Number 5. Exploring spirituality and various religions. The relationship between spirituality and religions is as complex as it is rich, involving points of convergence, tensions, and mutual influences that shape how individuals and cultures perceive the transcendental, the divine, and the purpose of life. Although often used as synonyms, spirituality and religions are not the same thing. While spirituality is broader, more subjective, and often detached from formal structures, religions tend to be organized based on belief systems, rituals, and dogmas established by specific traditions. The interaction between these dimensions has profound implications for humanity, including scientific discoveries that help elucidate their effects, benefits, and differences. Fundamental differences. Spirituality can be defined as an individual search for meaning, purpose, and connection with something greater, whether it be the universe, nature, the divine, or one's own inner essence. It is fluid, personal, and often guided by subjective experiences and intuitions. It does not require institutions, dogmas, or rituals, although it can coexist with them. Religion, on the other hand, is an organized structure that seeks to answer the fundamental questions of existence, but based on doctrines, sacred texts, spiritual leaders, and formal practices. Religions such as Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Judaism provide shared narratives, ethical codes, and communal rituals that help their followers connect with the sacred and find a sense of belonging. These differences generate tensions and debates. Many people believe that spirituality transcends religions and can exist independently of them, while others argue that religion is the most legitimate channel to express and experience spirituality.
Points of convergence. Despite the differences, spirituality and religion share many fundamental goals and themes. The search for the meaning of life. Both seek to answer existential questions such as what is the purpose of life and what happens after death. Transformative practices. Meditation, prayer, contemplation, and fasting are common practices in spiritual and religious traditions, demonstrating that both spirituality and religion seek elevation and self-knowledge. Focus on well-being. The connection with something greater, whether spiritual or religious, is associated with promoting mental health, emotional resilience, and a greater sense of purpose. Scientific studies confirm that practices such as prayer or meditation reduce stress, increase life satisfaction, and promote healthy social relationships. Recognition of interconnectedness. Many religions preach unity among human beings and creation, something that is also central to spirituality. Scientific discoveries about spirituality. Science has increasingly investigated the effects of spirituality and religions on the human mind and body. Significant findings include effects of meditation and prayer. Neuroscience studies have shown that contemplative practices, common in both spirituality and religions, alter brain activity, increasing neural connectivity and reducing stress. Benefits for mental and physical health. Research indicates that spirituality, regardless of its relationship with specific religions, is associated with lower rates of anxiety, depression, and even cardiovascular diseases. Brain plasticity. Spiritual techniques such as mindfulness demonstrate that the human brain is capable of changing its structure in response to intentional practices of connection and self-awareness. Although these findings do not prove the existence of the transcendental, they validate the tangible benefits of spiritual and religious practices. Divergences and tensions. Despite the points of convergence, there are aspects that divide spirituality and religion. Dogmatism versus freedom. Spirituality values individual freedom to explore the transcendental in a personal and unstructured way, while religions often impose rules, dogmas, and specific interpretations. Inclusion versus exclusivity. Spirituality tends to be universalist, embracing multiple perspectives and traditions. Many religions, however, claim to be the only legitimate path to reach the truth or the divine. Emphasis on the inner versus the outer. Spirituality is often centered on inner development and self-knowledge, while religions emphasize external practices such as rituals, celebrations, and adherence to community norms. The role of science in the divide. Science has played an important role in exploring and clarifying the differences and similarities between spirituality and religion. However, it also highlights the limitations of both approaches. For science, the beneficial effects of spiritual and religious practices do not prove the existence of a divine or transcendental force. These benefits can be explained by neurological, social, and psychological mechanisms. Science questions the literalism of many religious texts and miraculous events, which are often interpreted as metaphors in modern spirituality. Paths to coexistence. Despite the tensions, spirituality and religion can coexist harmoniously, especially when understood as complementary ways of approaching the human experience. For many people, religion is a means to explore spirituality, while others prefer to follow an independent path outside of religious structures. Ultimately, both spirituality and religions seek to answer the same fundamental questions of existence. With the growing openness to interreligious and interspiritual dialogue, as well as the integration of scientific discoveries, humanity can build bridges between these approaches, enriching our understanding of the universe and our place in it. 6. What is spirituality? Spirituality is a fundamental dimension of human experience, associated with the search for meaning, connection, and purpose in life. It is a way of exploring the great questions of existence, such as the meaning of life, the nature of reality, and our relationship with the universe, with others, and with ourselves. Although it does not have a universally accepted definition, spirituality transcends cultural, religious, and philosophical boundaries, being experienced in a unique way by each individual. At its core, spirituality is not necessarily tied to any specific religion or belief. It is a personal journey that can be shaped by practices, values, and deeply subjective experiences. For many, spirituality is expressed through a connection with something greater, whether it be God, the universe, nature, or a transcendent energy. For others, it is linked to self-knowledge, the search for inner peace, and the cultivation of virtues such as love, compassion, gratitude, and humility. Historically, spirituality has been associated with religious traditions, which served as guides for exploring the transcendental and offering answers to the fundamental questions of existence. However, over time, especially in the modern world, spirituality has evolved to become a more inclusive and pluralistic field, in many cases detaching itself from formal religious structures. This transformation reflects a growing desire for personal freedom and a more open and flexible approach to spiritual matters. A striking characteristic of spirituality is its connection to emotional, mental, and even physical well-being. Scientific studies show that spiritual practices such as meditation, prayer, and contemplation can reduce stress, increase resilience, and promote an overall sense of well-being. This happens because these practices help cultivate mindfulness, self-awareness, and social connection, essential elements for a balanced life. Furthermore, spirituality often involves the perception of interconnectedness, the idea that all beings and things are deeply and intrinsically connected. This perspective encourages attitudes of respect, care, and empathy, not only toward people, but also toward the environment and the universe as a whole. For many, this holistic view is a source of inspiration and motivation to act in a more ethical and responsible way. Although spirituality is often seen as something positive, it also presents challenges. Exploring the unknown, dealing with existential doubts, or confronting fears about mortality can be uncomfortable. However, these challenges also offer opportunities for growth and transformation. Spirituality, therefore, is both a path and a goal. It is a continuous journey of discovery and connection that varies from person to person and can be shaped by different experiences, cultures, and traditions. Whether it is practiced and embraced within a formal religion or entirely independently, spirituality remains a profoundly influential and enduring force that continually guides all of humanity in the search for meaning, understanding, and a much deeper sense of purpose within their lives. 7. Spirituality throughout history from the very beginning. Spirituality is one of the oldest and most enduring facets of human experience, a force that has accompanied humanity since its origins, spanning eras, civilizations, and cultures. Since the earliest times, peoples from all over the world have sought to understand the mysteries of the universe, the nature of existence, and their place in the cosmic order. This search for transcendence and connection with the sacred gave rise to practices, beliefs, and rituals that, although different in form, share a common core. Spirituality as a way to explore the deeper meaning of life. Ancient peoples and spirituality. The ancient Egyptians. In ancient Egypt, spirituality was intrinsically linked to religion and permeated every aspect of life. The belief in an afterlife was central, and the Egyptians devoted enormous resources to building tombs, such as the pyramids, which were also spiritual monuments. The ancient Egyptians firmly believed that the human soul, known as the Ka, survived long after death, and required careful guidance to successfully reach the eternal field of reeds, which they envisioned as a magnificent spiritual paradise. Funerary rituals, including mummification, were deeply elaborate spiritual practices, symbolizing the belief in the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Mayas, Incas, and Aztecs. The civilizations of Central and South America developed complex spiritual systems based on cosmic and natural observations. The Mayas, for example, created detailed calendars that integrated celestial events with spiritual life. For them, the universe was sustained by rituals that were necessary to maintain the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. The Incas had a spirituality deeply connected to nature, venerating Inti, the sun god, and Pachamama, Mother Earth. Their rituals involved offerings, festivals, and ceremonies to ensure harmony between beings and the cosmos. Celts and Druids. In ancient Europe, the Celts and their priests, the Druids, developed a spirituality deeply rooted in nature. They believed that the natural world was inhabited by spirits, and many of their rituals were performed in sacred groves. Respect for natural cycles, such as solstices and equinoxes, was central to their spiritual practice. The wisdom of the Druids ranged from herbal medicine to interpreting signs from nature, representing a form of spirituality that saw life as interconnected. Peoples of Mesopotamia and other ancient civilizations. The Sumerians, Babylonians, and other peoples of Mesopotamia created complex spiritual systems that viewed life as a reflection of a divine order. They built ziggurats, pyramid-shaped temples, to connect with the gods, who were seen as responsible for specific aspects of life, such as fertility, war, and the weather. Spirituality in the medieval period. In the Middle Ages, spirituality faced a period of tension with the rise of the power of the Catholic Church. While many popular spiritual practices continued to flourish, such as the veneration of saints and the undertaking of pilgrimages, other forms of spirituality were persecuted. The so-called witches of the Middle Ages were often women who practiced ancient forms of spirituality and knowledge, including the use of medicinal herbs, protective rituals, and a deep connection with nature. These ancient practices, which were frequently misunderstood, were systematically demonized by the established church, ultimately resulting in brutal and widespread persecutions during the period of witch hunts. Indigenous peoples and contemporary spirituality. Indigenous peoples around the world continue to preserve spiritual traditions that date back to time immemorial. These spiritual systems are notable for their holistic worldview that sees the sacred in all things. Australian Aboriginals. The dream time is a spiritual worldview that connects the creation of the world with the present. For the Aboriginals, the land, the ancestors, and living beings are interconnected by an eternal spiritual network. Indigenous peoples of the Amazon. Tribes such as the Yanomami and the Huni Queen use medicinal plants like ayahuasca to reach heightened states of consciousness and connect with the spiritual world. Native peoples of North America. The spirituality of North American indigenous peoples is connected to rituals such as the sun dance, which celebrate the interconnectedness of all beings. They regard the earth and the natural elements as sacred, cultivating a deep reverence for life. Spirituality before civilizations. Even before the rise of great civilizations, there is evidence that our prehistoric ancestors already practiced forms of spirituality. Graves with objects, rituals, cave paintings, and sculptures such as the Venus of Willendorf suggest a spiritual connection with nature and with the mystery of life and death. The persistence of spirituality. Throughout history, spirituality has been a constant. Although it has been reinterpreted and adapted to the needs and conditions of each era, the human desire to connect with something greater has never disappeared. From ancient rituals to modern spiritual practices, spirituality continues to be a central element of the human experience, offering meaning, connection, and a sense of transcendence that surpasses the barriers of time and culture. Now let's move on to Chapter 2. 1. First of all, here is how to begin a truly meaningful spiritual path in the world today. Starting on a spiritual path today is a personal journey that does not require strict prerequisites, only the willingness to explore the deeper meaning of life and the connection with oneself, with others, and with the universe. Unlike following dogmas or specific traditions, modern spirituality invites an individualized approach where each person finds their own answers and practices that resonate with their heart and mind. The first step is to be open to the idea that spirituality is not limited to religious beliefs or specific practices. It is about awakening to the awareness that there is more to existence than just tangible reality. This openness creates space to explore concepts such as purpose, interconnectedness, and transcendence. Reflection is one of the initial pillars. Setting aside time to quiet the mind and observe your inner thoughts and feelings can be a transformative starting point. Moments of introspection help identify what truly matters, your personal values, and what might be blocking your spiritual growth. Another essential step is to seek self-knowledge. This can be done through reading, conversations, or studying spiritual traditions that interest or inspire you. This learning does not need to be rigid or follow a single path. The idea is to explore and adapt what fits your personal journey. Connection with nature is a widely accessible practice that helps cultivate spirituality. Being present outdoors, observing natural cycles, and feeling part of something greater can bring a profound sense of peace and integration. Finally, beginning a spiritual path is, above all, a choice to cultivate a more conscious, fulfilling, and connected life. It's not about reaching a final destination, but about appreciating the journey, which is unique for each individual. 2. Where we come from. The question of where we come from is one of the oldest and deepest that humanity has ever asked. At the heart of this question lies the desire to understand our origin, purpose, and connection with the universe. Spirituality throughout the ages has offered various perspectives to explore this mystery, combining intuition, ancestral wisdom, and, in some traditions, insights that go beyond what science can measure or explain. The cosmic origin and spiritual connection. From a spiritual perspective, the idea of origin goes beyond the physical. Although we can trace our biological ancestry back to the first living organisms or even to the stars that provided the essential chemical elements for life, spirituality invites us to look at a deeper dimension, the origin of consciousness and the essence that inhabits every human being. For many spiritual traditions, we are not just matter, but also spirit, energy, or soul connected to a universal source. Some philosophies suggest that we come from a primordial unity, a kind of cosmic field of energy or pure love. This source is described as eternal, infinite, and unchanging, the place from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. For mystics from various cultures, such as the ancient Vedas of India or the wise Sufis, we are individual manifestations of a divine totality, fragments of the infinite that ventured into earthly experience to grow, learn, and remember their true nature. The vision of ancient peoples. Since time immemorial, cultures have sought to explain our origin through myths and spiritual stories that illustrate a profound respect for the mystery of creation. The Egyptians believed that human beings were formed by the gods as part of a perfect cosmic plan in which each soul had a specific purpose. Indigenous peoples such as Native Americans and Australian Aborigines teach that we come from the earth, the sky, and the natural elements, being part of an eternal cycle of life. The Mayan creation myths describe humanity as the result of a divine act in which the gods shaped the first humans from corn, a sacred symbol. For them, we are made from the food that sustains us, in a spiritual metaphor that connects our origin to the very cycle of life and to our interdependence with the natural world. Where do we come from as consciousness? One of the most fascinating aspects of spirituality is the idea that we are not just physical bodies, but spiritual beings living a human experience. This view suggests that our true origin is not in the physical world, but in a higher reality or beyond time and space. Some traditions, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, speak of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, where the soul or consciousness moves through different lives until it attains enlightenment or unification with the divine source. For these traditions, the question, where do we come from, is inseparable from the question, why are we here? Origin is not seen as a fixed point in the past, but as a continuity. We come from a cosmic whole, but we also carry within us the potential to return to it through spiritual transformation. The connection with the cosmos. Some spiritual systems suggest that the origin of humanity is intrinsically linked to the cosmos. We are not just inhabitants of a planet in a vast and seemingly indifferent universe. We are conscious expressions of this universe. The contemporary physicist and mystic Carl Sagan often said that we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. This view echoes ancient spiritual traditions that see human beings as active participants in the great cosmic drama, with the mission to explore, create, and connect with the sacred that permeates everything. The duality between science and spirituality. Modern science can trace our physical origin back to the stars, which form the essential elements for life. But spirituality broadens this view, asking about the origin of the vital energy that gives life to the body and the consciousness that experiences existence. Where does the self that perceives, feels, and questions come from? This question remains open both for science and for spirituality, but the latter often invites us to accept that we are more than atoms and molecules. We are part of a greater purpose, perhaps unknown but deeply meaningful. Origin as remembrance. For many spiritual practices such as meditation and introspection, the path to understanding our origin is not to look outward but inward. Spirituality teaches that the answer to the question, where do we come from, is already present within each of us, hidden beneath layers of worldly distractions and superficial identifications. We are invited to remember our divine essence, to reconnect with what we have always been, but have forgotten along the way. Where do we come from? Spirituality does not seek to provide a definitive answer, but rather to open doors to deep reflections and transformative experiences. We come from the earth, from the stars, from a divine source, from an eternal cycle of life, or perhaps from all of these combined. More than just a question about the past, this inquiry leads us to contemplate the present and the future. How do we live our lives in connection with our origin and with the sacred that permeates us? It is an invitation to continuously discover and rediscover the essence of who we are. 3. We are part of a whole. The idea that we are part of a whole is central to spirituality. This perception transcends specific beliefs, cultures, or eras and points to a universal truth, the interconnectedness of all things. We are not isolated entities but threads in a vast web of existence where everything is interconnected, from the atoms that make up our bodies to the invisible forces that shape the cosmos. The fundamental unity. Many spiritual traditions teach that the essence of everything is one and the same. In Hinduism, the concept of Brahman describes an indivisible supreme reality from which everything arises and to which everything returns. In Taoism, the Tao is the universal force that flows through all things. Meanwhile, in Christian mysticism, we find the idea that God is in everything and everything is in God. These philosophies point to a common origin and a shared destiny, suggesting that at the deepest level there is no separation between self and other, human and nature, or world and universe. Interconnection in the natural world. Nature offers clear examples of this unity. The cycle of life, where the elements of one being become the foundation for another. It is a constant dance of transformation and continuity. The air we breathe today was at some point exhaled by trees, animals, or other human beings. The water we drink has already traveled through rivers, clouds, and oceans. Everything we consume and everything we are is part of a continuous flow of exchange and interdependence. This interconnection is not only physical but also energetic. Many spiritual traditions claim that there is a vital energy or universal force that permeates everything. In Japan, this energy is called ki, in India, prana, and in the Chinese tradition, chi. This energy is the foundation of practices such as meditation, Reiki, and acupuncture, which seek to harmonize the flow of this vital force within us and around us. The collective consciousness. Beyond physical and energetic connection, spirituality emphasizes the existence of a collective consciousness. Carl Jung, a renowned psychologist, described the concept of the collective unconscious as a universal reservoir of knowledge, symbols, and experiences shared by all of humanity. This echoes what many spiritual traditions say. Our minds and souls are not separate, but are part of a universal mind, a greater consciousness that unites us. This idea explains phenomena such as empathy and intuition. We feel the pain and joy of others because on a deep level we are them. We intuit truths or events because we are connected to a greater wisdom that transcends time and space. Separation as illusion. Many spiritual philosophies consider the sense of separation to be an illusion. In Buddhism, this is called Maya, a veil that makes us believe we are disconnected individuals. This illusion feeds the ego, which builds barriers between us and others, generating conflict, suffering, and a sense of emptiness. Spirituality, however, invites us to look beyond the ego and recognize the underlying unity of all things. Meditation and other spiritual practices are powerful tools for dissolving this illusion. By quieting the mind, we begin to feel this connection, realizing that our actions, thoughts, and intentions reverberate throughout the whole. We are part of the whole, but we are also the whole. There is a fascinating idea in spirituality. We are not just part of the whole, but also the whole itself. It's like a drop of water in the ocean. The drop contains all the properties of the ocean and at the same time cannot be separated from it. This duality is explored in teachings such as the idea that the universe is within us. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm, and understanding ourselves is also understanding the universe. Spiritual responsibility. Understanding that we are part of a whole brings a profound responsibility. Our choices do not affect only our individual lives, but have an impact on the entire web of existence. Every thought, word, and action carries energy that spreads, influencing the world around us. That is why spirituality often emphasizes compassion, respect for nature, and the pursuit of harmony. The return to unity. The spiritual journey is, for the most part, a process of remembering this fundamental truth, that we have never been separated. From birth, we are conditioned to see the world through the lens of separation, but spirituality reminds us to look beyond. Meditating, contemplating nature, helping others, or simply being present are ways for us to reconnect with this unity. We are part of a whole, but this is not just a philosophical or poetic idea. It is a truth that permeates spirituality, science, and human experience. Recognizing this interconnectedness not only transforms the way we see the world, but also the way we live in it. When we understand that we are one with everything and everyone, our actions begin to reflect this unity, promoting harmony, peace, and a profound sense of belonging. After all, separation is only an appearance. In essence, we are one. 4. Reincarnation. Reincarnation, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, is an idea present in various cultures and spiritual traditions throughout history. More than just a metaphysical concept, it is seen as a process of the soul's evolution, a journey towards spiritual perfection and the full understanding of our divine essence. This text explores the evidence, perspectives, and arguments that support reincarnation, including biblical references, modern phenomena such as déjà vu, and historical accounts, in order to convince the reader of the plausibility and depth of this concept. Reincarnation and the Catholic Gospel of John. Right at the beginning of the Gospel, chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here it is necessary to properly interpret what the word "word" means, which refers to vital energy, existence, being. When John says that the essence was with God and that the essence was God, if we want to understand it spiritually, it would be the energy was with the whole, because the energy was the whole. In other words, it already existed before becoming material, before incarnating. Although many modern Christian traditions reject reincarnation, we find intriguing clues about it in the scriptures. In the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 3 to 7, Jesus says to Nicodemus, "Truly, truly, I say to you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." Nicodemus interprets this literally, asking how someone can enter their mother's womb again. Jesus responds enigmatically, saying that rebirth is of water and of the Spirit. This passage can be understood as a reference to the spiritual process of reincarnation, where the soul is reborn to evolve toward the divine. Another example is found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 11 to 14, where Jesus identifies John the Baptist as the reincarnation of the prophet Elijah. And if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who was to come. These passages suggest that in ancient times, reincarnation was not a strange or ethereal idea, but part of a broader understanding of spirituality. Déjà vu and memories of past lives. One of the phenomena that most intrigues humanity is déjà vu, that inexplicable feeling of having already lived through a moment before. While science seeks neurological explanations, many spiritual traditions suggest that déjà vu is a glimpse of memories from past lives. Accounts of children who remember precise details of previous lives, often verifiable, offer impressive evidence. The work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, documented thousands of cases in which memories of past lives were confirmed by historical records. These experiences indicate that the soul carries with it impressions from its previous existences, and that these memories can emerge during moments of spiritual or emotional connection. Reincarnation as evolution. The idea of reincarnation is closely linked to spiritual evolution. In many traditions, it is believed that each life offers unique lessons that help the soul to grow. Just as a child goes through different stages of learning at school, the soul passes through various incarnations, facing challenges, mistakes, and triumphs, until it reaches enlightenment. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the concept of samsara describes this cycle of rebirths. The ultimate goal is to transcend the cycle, achieving union with the divine, moksha, or the state of enlightenment, nirvana. Each life is an opportunity for purification and growth, helping the soul to overcome the ego and align itself with its divine essence. Historical and cultural evidence. The belief in reincarnation is not limited to a single culture or era. Ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Druids had similar concepts. Plato, the Greek philosopher, wrote extensively about the transmigration of the soul, stating that souls return to earth to learn and perfect themselves. Among the Celts and Druids, reincarnation was seen as a natural cycle.
The Celts believed that the soul was immortal and after death was reborn to continue its journey. Indigenous peoples also share similar beliefs. For Native Americans, the soul can return to Earth to help their community or to complete unfinished missions. Many tribes believe that the connection with ancestors is a form of evidence of reincarnation, since souls can return to the family or spiritual group to which they belong. Science and reincarnation. Although modern science does not have the tools to definitively prove reincarnation, there are studies that suggest its possibility. In addition to the cases documented by Ian Stevenson, past life regression hypnotherapy, as promoted by therapists like Brian Weiss, reveals impressive details that patients could not have known otherwise. Furthermore, quantum physics is beginning to raise questions about the continuity of consciousness after death. Theories such as quantum entanglement suggest that energy and information can transcend time and space, which aligns with the idea that consciousness is not limited by the physical body. Reincarnation is much more than just a spiritual concept. It is a comprehensive view of existence that unites history, religion, philosophy, and science. It invites us to see life as a continuous journey, in which every step is meaningful and contributes to the growth of the soul. When we look at the scriptures, historical accounts, and modern experiences, we realize that the idea of reincarnation is as old as humanity itself. Far from being a fantasy, it offers profound answers to existential questions and reminds us that life is a cycle of learning, healing, and transformation. Thus, by embracing the idea of reincarnation, we also embrace the possibility of a greater purpose, where each life brings us closer to the divine and to our true essence. 5. The process of letting go of long-held beliefs and dogmas. Beginning a genuine spiritual path requires courage. Courage to question, to let go, and often to deconstruct everything that has been learned up to that point. This is because true spirituality, the kind that transcends doctrines and rigid systems, cannot flourish in soil where dogmas, limiting beliefs, and deeply rooted traditions dominate the ground. To walk this path, it is necessary to empty the mind, abandon prejudices, and open oneself to the vast universe of possibilities that the Spirit offers us. The weight of dogmas and traditions. Since time immemorial, religions have been structured around dogmas, absolute truths that cannot be questioned. These truths were often shaped to serve specific purposes of social, cultural, or political control. Over the centuries, these dogmas became pillars of belief for millions, passed down from generation to generation as a sacred and unquestionable legacy. However, spirituality is not about repeating someone else's truths, but about experiencing your own truth. Dogmas, no matter how well-intentioned they may have been at their origin, often limit this search by imposing barriers. They teach us what to think, but rarely teach us how to think or feel authentically. Deeply rooted traditions often come with rituals that, although rich in symbolism, may be devoid of personal meaning for those who practice them. Following a practice without understanding its deeper purpose is like walking in circles. There is movement, but there is no progress. The need to empty the mind. On the spiritual path, the first step is to empty yourself. This emptying does not mean to disregard or reject all beliefs, but to create inner space to question them. It takes courage to say, "What if everything I was taught is not the ultimate truth?" Emptying the mind is an act of humility. It is to recognize that no matter how much we have learned, the spiritual universe is vast, unfathomable, and there is always something new to discover. This does not mean completely abandoning the faith or the values that religions may have passed on to us, but rather letting go of the limitations that these beliefs can impose. Imagine the mind as a container filled with murky water. Only when we pour out this water can we fill it with clean, crystal clear water. In the same way, letting go of dogmas and rigid traditions allows us to reach new knowledge, experiences, and perceptions that were previously beyond our grasp. A journey of discovery. While religions often offer ready-made answers, spirituality challenges us to seek our own answers. This process can be uncomfortable because it requires us to face the unknown and explore inner territories that may be frightening. But it is precisely in this space of uncertainty that true spiritual connection happens. By letting go of dogmas, we stop seeing the divine as something distant or exclusive. We realize that the sacred is in everything, in nature, in people, in everyday experiences, and especially within ourselves. This discovery is profoundly liberating, as it eliminates the need for intermediaries between us and the divine. Spirituality, unlike institutionalized religion, does not require us to follow a single path. On the contrary, it encourages us to create our own path based on our experiences, intuitions, and understandings. Openness and attunement with the universe. An empty mind is like a clean antenna, ready to pick up the frequencies of the universe. When we are free from prejudices and limiting beliefs, we become receptive to new energies, ideas, and synchronicities. This openness allows us to notice connections that previously went unnoticed. A chance encounter that brings an important message. An intuition that guides us towards something meaningful, or a moment of silence that connects us to a deep peace. Furthermore, without the filters imposed by dogmas, our spiritual vision becomes clearer. We come to understand that the divine is not confined to temples or sacred books, but is present everywhere, waiting for us to recognize it. Benefits of letting go of restraints. When we set aside dogmas and rigid traditions, we experience a freedom that is essential for spiritual growth. We become responsible for our own journey, instead of delegating it to external systems. This freedom allows us to explore different traditions and practices. We can learn from various sources without limiting ourselves to a single perspective, developing a more authentic connection. Instead of following predefined scripts, we experience a spirituality that reflects who we truly are. Continually evolving, without the barriers of dogma, we are always open to new ideas, experiences, and insights. The challenge and the reward. Letting go of old beliefs can be a challenging process, especially because many of them are deeply rooted in our identity. We may feel fear, guilt, or confusion when questioning what we were taught as absolute truth. However, the reward is immense. By freeing ourselves from these restraints, we discover a world of spiritual possibilities. We begin to experience spirituality not as a set of rules, but as a living and dynamic experience. Embarking on a spiritual path requires a leap of faith, not in dogmas or traditions, but in ourselves and in the universe that surrounds us. By emptying the mind and letting go of deeply rooted beliefs, we create space for new understandings and connections. This process leads us to a free, authentic, and deeply personal spirituality, where each step is guided by our own truth and our connection with the whole. It is a path that requires courage, but rewards us with a life of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. Chapter 3. The Beginning. The silence of the voice and the mind. Observing nature. Silence is a gateway to the inner world that often remains unexplored. It's not just about quieting the voice, but about calming the mind, that incessant flow of thoughts that pulls us away from the present. When the mind becomes silent, life reveals itself in all its depth and fullness, especially through nature, which is always ready to teach us. In the absence of noise, you begin to hear something deeper, the sound of the wind caressing the leaves, the song of the birds that seems to narrate ancient stories, the flow of a stream that resonates like an eternal melody. These sounds are not just background noise. They are the pulse of life, a symphony that invites us to listen with our hearts, not just with our ears. Silence is a gateway. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we realize that nature is never truly silent. It communicates in a subtle and constant way, revealing hidden lessons in every detail. A field of flowers is not just a collection of plants, but a dance of colors, shapes, and scents, each element playing its part in a universal harmony. Inner silence allows us to observe without judging, without labeling. The bird ceases to be just a bird and becomes a being in full flight, free and vibrant. The tree ceases to be just a tree and transforms into a testament of resilience and calm, with firm roots and branches that embrace the sky. The quiet, still mind and attentive observation. When we free the mind from the need to interpret or categorize everything we see, we begin to perceive the essence of what surrounds us. The silent mind does not seek answers. It simply observes and absorbs. It is in this state of presence that we discover we are part of everything we see. Sitting by the edge of a lake in complete silence is more than just a pause. It is an encounter with the infinite. The reflection of the clouds on the water seems to whisper secrets of the cosmos, and the gentle movement of the waves reflects the fluidity of life. Everything teaches us if we are willing to listen. Nature is a teacher. In nature, there is no hurry, no anxiety, only cycles that renew themselves. The seed that germinates does not worry about speeding up its growth. It simply is. The sun rises and sets effortlessly, fulfilling its purpose with a simplicity that seems sacred. This natural rhythm contrasts with the hustle and bustle of the human world, where we often feel disconnected and overwhelmed. By observing nature, we are reminded that we are also part of this flow, that within us exists the same calm, the same strength, and the same beauty. Silence heals. The silence of the voice and mind is a form of healing. It allows us to listen not only to the external world, but also to the internal one. We discover that the answers we seek often do not come from noise, but from silence. In the middle of the forest, far from the turmoil, the heart slows down. It is as if the earth itself embraces us, reminding us that we are never truly alone. The sense of peace that emerges is a reconnection with our essence, which is as simple and at the same time as profound as the life we see around us. The practice of silence and observation. To experience this state, all you need to do is find a place in nature and be present. Bring no expectations, only the intention to be.
Observe how the wind moves the branches, how the shadows dance on the ground, how the scent of fresh earth awakens old memories. Allow yourself to merge with the moment without the need to understand it. In silence, understanding comes effortlessly, like a memory of something you always knew but forgot in the noise of modern life. The return to the whole. By quieting the mind and observing nature, we realize that we are not separate from it. Every leaf, every river, every mountain is an extension of who we are. This understanding brings a profound humility and a serene joy, as if we were finally returning to a home that has always been ours. Silence is the beginning of everything, and in silence, nature speaks. You just have to be willing to listen. In harmony with nature, the planet, and the cosmos. Being in tune with nature, the planet, and the cosmos is an awakening to a profound truth. Although we are small in the face of the vastness of the universe, we are simultaneously essential to the wholeness it represents. This understanding unites the humility of our condition with the grandeur of our role in the whole, revealing that every being, every particle carries a purpose, even if it is often incomprehensible. The connection with nature. Nature is the first gateway to this harmony. It is where we find the pulse of life in forms we can touch, see, and feel. Walking barefoot on the earth is more than a simple act. It is a direct reconnection with the energies that sustain us. The trees breathe the air we exhale, offering us oxygen in return. The rivers that flow are like veins that nourish life, and the wind that blows carries the messages of the world around us. To attune with nature, it is necessary to slow down and be present. Observing the movement of leaves in the wind or the reflection of sunlight on a lake is not just an exercise in contemplation. It is a silent dialogue with the spirit of the planet. This attunement teaches us that we are not separate from the earth, but rather an expression of it, just as a wave is an expression of the ocean. Harmony with the planet. Expanding this connection, we realize that the planet is a living organism. Its mountains, oceans, and forests are not just resources, but parts of an interconnected system of which we are an essential piece. Tuning in with the planet means adopting an attitude of respect and care, recognizing that the well-being of the earth directly reflects on our own balance. The act of planting a tree, reducing waste, or simply admiring a sunset is a gesture of harmony with the planet. It's like saying, "I see you and understand that I am part of you." This recognition does not diminish our smallness, but reinforces our responsibility and the beauty of being part of something so vast and vibrant. The call of the stars. When we look at the night sky, we are confronted with the immensity of the cosmos. The stars that shine light years away are a reminder of the scale of the universe and our apparent insignificance. However, at the same time, they also show us our greatness, for the atoms that make up our bodies were forged in the hearts of stars that exploded billions of years ago. We are literally made of stardust. This scientific truth is also a spiritual revelation. We carry within us the essence of the universe. Every beat of our heart is an echo of the Big Bang, and every thought is a manifestation of the cosmic consciousness that permeates everything. To attune ourselves to the stars and the cosmos is to embrace the mystery, to allow ourselves to marvel at the unknown, knowing that even without all the answers, we are part of a greater plan. Deeply contemplating the vast and boundless infinite stirs within our souls a profound sense of both humility and gratitude, for we are a tiny microcosm that perfectly mirrors and reflects the grand macrocosm. Smallness and grandeur. When we realize our smallness in the face of the vastness of the cosmos, we might feel insignificant. However, this smallness is only a limited perspective. Within each of us exists a universe as vast as the one we contemplate in the stars. We are small, yes, but infinite in potential. Being small in the face of the whole is, in fact, a gift. It is an opportunity to lose ourselves in the vastness and find our place within it. It is the possibility of recognizing that while we are a grain of sand, we are also the entire ocean. Harmony with the whole. To be in harmony with nature, the planet, and the cosmos requires opening both heart and mind. It is a process of letting go of ideas, of separation, and of individuality, embracing instead unity. Every breath we take is shared with trees and stars. Every step we take echoes in the meaning of the universe. This state of harmony can be reached through simple practices such as meditating outdoors, contemplating the sky, or even listening to the sound of rain. But more than just practices, it is a shift in consciousness, a realization that we are part of an eternal flow of energy connecting the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. The Great Invitation. Attuning ourselves to everything around us is an invitation to live with more presence, more gratitude, and more respect. It is a call to recognize that we are not merely inhabitants of the earth, but active participants in a vibrant and conscious universe. When we feel this connection, our actions change, making us more compassionate, more caring, and more aligned with what is essential. We discover that by harmonizing ourselves with nature, the planet, and the cosmos, we also find our true essence. A being small in form but immeasurable in its connection to the whole. Cultivating transformation. When someone embarks on a spiritual journey, transformation begins from the inside out. It's not just about practices like meditation, reading, or rituals, but about real changes in the way we live, relate to others, and perceive the world around us. This change is reflected in our attitudes toward ourselves and others, including those we barely know. Every action, word, and thought comes to be seen as an opportunity for growth and for expressing our spiritual alignment. Attitudes toward ourselves. The spiritual journey begins with self-knowledge and self-awareness. The way we treat ourselves sets the foundation for all other relationships. Practicing self-compassion. Before we can connect deeply with others, we need to learn to be kind and sincere with ourselves. Oftentimes, we carry harsh internal judgments that limit us. By recognizing our imperfections as part of the human experience, we become more compassionate. When you make a mistake at work or at home, instead of criticizing yourself harshly, take a gentle approach. I am learning. This mistake is an opportunity to grow. Taking care of the body and mind. Spirituality includes treating the body and mind as temples. Mindful eating, adequate sleep, and practicing activities such as yoga or walking in nature are ways to honor our physical and mental existence. Dedicating 10 minutes in the morning to deep breathing or a short meditation can transform the rest of your day, bringing more focus and serenity. Letting go of old patterns. Often we carry beliefs, habits, and fears that no longer serve us, whether due to childhood traumas or even situations from past lives. We need to work on everything that doesn't make us feel balanced. Letting go of this baggage is essential. If you notice that you react negatively to criticism, try to pause, breathe, and ask yourself, why does this affect me? How can I respond calmly? Attitudes toward others. The spiritual journey extends beyond ourselves. Even though each of us is a unique being and the path is singular, we live in a society. The way we treat others, including strangers, reflects our inner state. Often others serve as mirrors of ourselves. Cultivating empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. On a spiritual path, we realize that everyone is facing invisible battles. If someone is rude to you, instead of reacting aggressively, ask yourself, what might this person be going through? Can I respond with calm and understanding? Practice gratitude and acknowledgement. Expressing gratitude even for small actions creates deeper connections. Knowing how to say thank you for even the simplest act is a sign of connection with others. Thank the cafe employee for their service with a genuine smile. A simple thank you can change someone's day. Avoid making judgments. Spirituality teaches that each person is at a unique point on their journey. We never know what stage or process someone else is going through. Judging someone based on their behavior or choices can be a barrier to true connection. If you meet someone who lives very differently from you, instead of criticizing them, think, this person is living according to what they know. Can I learn something from them? Offer help without expecting anything in return. True generosity comes from the heart, without expectations. We shouldn't help someone in a certain situation just so we can be recognized later. If that's the case, it's better to remain quiet. If you see someone struggling to carry bags or find their way, offer your help. Even if the gesture is small, it can have a big impact. How we act toward people we don't know. The spiritual world teaches that we are all connected. The way we treat even strangers reflects the energy we contribute to the universe. And everything we send out to the universe comes back to us. Smile more. A smile is a universal form of connection. Even for a stranger, it can be a ray of light on a dark day. Smile at someone on public transport or on the street. It may not seem like much, but it might be enough to lift that person's spirits. Practice active listening. When we listen to others, especially those we've never met, we create a space of acceptance. Showing attention to every word is something of immense greatness. Sometimes the only thing that person needs is a few minutes of our time, simply to be listened to. If an elderly person starts a conversation on a park bench, listen attentively. It might be the only moment in their day when they feel heard. Respecting space and differences. Recognizing that everyone has the right to be themselves is essential. It's true that we all come from the same origin, but everyone has had different experiences throughout life and has taken on different roles in this dimension. So, respecting what another person thinks, which is the sum of all the experiences they've had, is a sign of spiritual evolution. Respecting when someone needs their own space, their moment of reflection and solitude, is also giving them the freedom to evolve on their own. In traffic, instead of honking or getting irritated with someone who is driving slowly, practice patience. Turning small gestures into big impacts. Small gestures in everyday life have the power to create waves of change. The spiritual journey does not require grand actions, but rather consistency and authenticity. We cannot and should not start with big actions, but with the smallest one, and that alone will make all the difference. Reducing conflicts. Seeking peaceful solutions in disagreements transforms the energy around you. It's not worth imposing your idea and your version, but rather listening to the other person. Gather all the facts, and certainly the sum of two opinions will be much better than just your own. In a discussion with a colleague, try to listen before responding. Often the solution lies in understanding the other person's perspective. Cultivate presence. Avoid judgments. Spirituality teaches that each person is at a unique point on their journey. We never know what stage or process the other person is going through. Judging someone based on their behavior or choices can be a barrier to true connection. If you meet someone who lives very differently from you, instead of criticizing them, think that person is living according to what they know. Can I learn something from them? Offer help without expecting anything in return. True generosity comes from the heart without expectations. We cannot help someone in a certain situation just so we can be recognized later. If that's the case, it's better to remain quiet. If you see someone struggling to carry bags or find their way, offer your help. Even if the gesture is small, it can have a big impact. Attitudes toward those we don't know. The spiritual world teaches that we are all connected. The way we treat even strangers reflects the energy we contribute to the universe. And everything we send out to the universe comes back to us. Smile more. A smile is a universal form of connection. Even for a stranger, it can be a ray of light on a dark day. Smile at someone on public transport or on the street. It may not seem like much, but it might be enough to lift that person's spirits. Practice active listening. When we listen to others, especially those we've never met, we create a space of acceptance. Showing attention to all their words is something of great significance. Sometimes the only thing that a person truly needs is just a few minutes of our time, simply to be listened to. If an elderly person starts a conversation on a park bench, listen attentively. It might be the only moment in their day when they feel heard. Respect personal space and differences. Recognizing that everyone has the right to be themselves is essential. It's true that we all come from the same origin, but everyone has had different experiences throughout life and has taken on different roles in this dimension. So, respecting what another person thinks, which is the sum of all the experiences they've had, is a sign of spiritual evolution. Respecting when someone needs their own space, their moment of reflection and solitude, is also giving them the freedom to evolve on their own. In traffic, instead of honking or getting irritated with someone who is driving slowly, practice patience, turning small gestures into big impacts. Small gestures in daily life have the power to create waves of change. The spiritual journey does not require grand actions, but rather consistency and authenticity. We cannot and should not start with big actions, but rather with the smallest one, and that alone will make all the difference. Reduce conflicts. Seeking peaceful solutions in disagreements transforms the energy around you. It's not worth imposing your idea and your version, but rather listening to the other person. Gather all the facts, and certainly the sum of two opinions will be much better than just your own. In a discussion with a colleague, try to listen before responding. Often the solution lies in understanding the other person's perspective. Cultivate presence. When we begin our spiritual journey, our intuition starts to become sharper. However, we should also analyze all the information that comes to us. What should we do with it? Is it often better to keep this information as lessons learned? When you enter an environment or meet someone, ask yourself, what am I feeling at this moment? Practice listening to your impression before your analytical mind intervenes. Observe the signs. Ascended masters and spiritual energies often communicate through signs. It could be a song, a meaningful awareness, repeating numbers like 1111, or even an inexplicable feeling of warmth or peace. Keep a spiritual journal to write down the signs you notice. As you record them, start to notice patterns. How to feel the energies around you. Connection with nature. Nature is a powerful portal for sensing universal energies. Trees, wind, water, and animals carry frequencies that can balance and align your own energy. Spend time in contact with nature. Place your hands on a tree, walk barefoot on the earth, or simply listen to the sound of the wind. Ask yourself, what energy am I feeling at this moment? Meditation to feel the energies. A meditative practice can help you tune into specific energies. But when you meditate, work on your anxiety. If you start a meditation and are more focused on what you feel than simply attuning to the cosmos, it will be difficult to sense what is meant for you. Sit in silence. Imagine a white light surrounding you and ask the universe or an ascended master to reveal themselves to you. Pay attention to the sensations in your body, emotions, or images that arise. Be mindful of your personal vibration. Similar energies attract each other. To feel and interact with higher energies, it is important to raise your own vibration through positive thoughts, gratitude, and practices such as prayer or mantras. If you are careless and lower your vibration, you will attract exactly situations and beings of that vibration, and vice versa. Start your day with a positive affirmation such as, I am an open channel for light and universal wisdom. Dealing with positive and negative energies. With positive energies such as love, peace, serenity, harmony, tranquility, confidence, and inspiration are gifts that we can welcome and expand. Be grateful. When you feel a positive energy, express gratitude to the universe or to the ascended master who sent it. Spread this energy through kind words or generous actions. This creates a cycle of upliftment. With negative energies, these energies should not be ignored or fought directly, but rather understood and transmuted. They often carry important messages about internal blockages or imbalances. Identify the source and ask yourself, is this energy mine or does it come from something external? Take a moment to visualize a protective shield of violet light surrounding you, effectively repelling and blocking any negative or harmful energies from entering your space. Use positive affirmations or visualize that negative energy being transformed into pure light. If you enter an environment where you feel heavy or uncomfortable, visualize roots extending from your feet into the earth, grounding you and allowing any negative energy to be absorbed and neutralized by nature. Connecting with ascended masters. Set a clear intention. Ascended masters respect free will and only intervene when invited. Lovingly state what you need, but do so with an attitude of faith, not with an attitude of discouragement. Before sleeping or meditating, make your request mentally. Dear Ascended Masters, I ask for your guidance and light on my spiritual journey. Help me to hear and feel your presence. Use spiritual tools. Crystals, incense, prayers, and mantras can facilitate the connection. Consult crystal guides. Each of them has functions that are more suitable for different situations. Use a crystal like amethyst for meditation, holding it in your hand while visualizing the Ascended Master sending light and wisdom. Also use rose quartz, the crystal of unconditional love. Recognize the response. Communication with Ascended Masters can be subtle, such as a sudden idea, a feeling of peace, or even the appearance of a person who brings an important message. Trust the insights that arise, even if they seem simple. Write them down and reflect on them later. Opening yourself to the universe. Tuning into the energies and Ascended Masters is a continuous journey of openness, trust, and practice. By learning to identify, feel, and work with these forces, you will discover a world of wisdom and support available at every step along the way. Allow yourself to live this experience with humility, knowing that each small discovery is a step toward a greater connection with the whole. Remember that you are never alone. The energies and Ascended Masters are always present, waiting to guide you as long as you open your heart and mind to listen to them. The danger of ego on the spiritual journey. How to avoid deceptions and dark paths. The spiritual journey is, without a doubt, one of the most transformative that a human being can undertake. When we decide to walk this path, we begin to notice significant changes in our lives. Greater clarity, serenity, and even the feeling of being more aligned with universal forces. However, it is precisely at this moment, when the first results begin to appear, that one of the greatest dangers arises for those seeking spiritual evolution, the ego. The ego, often associated with our individual identity, can easily become an insidious obstacle to spiritual progress. It has the ability to disguise itself as wisdom and enlightenment, leading us to believe that we have reached a level of development that is still far off. This deception can not only interrupt growth, but also lead us down dark paths that undo all the progress we have achieved. The role of the ego in the spiritual journey. Before we understand how the ego can lead us astray, it is important to truly understand what it is. The ego is that part of us that identifies with the material world and with our human experiences. It is necessary for us to interact with the world, but on the spiritual journey, its role must be balanced. When left unchecked, the ego can take control, creating illusions of power and wisdom that do not match reality. In spirituality, the ego tends to manifest in subtle ways. Feelings of superiority, believing that we are more enlightened or wiser than others. The pursuit of knowledge, wanting to be seen as a guru or someone with special powers. A disconnection from humility, ignoring the fact that even as we progress, we are still at the first steps of the journey. Belief in illusory powers, feeling that we can control the forces of the universe or manipulate energies irresponsibly. These symptoms may seem harmless at first, but they are the harbinger of a dangerous deviation. The deception of the ego feeling evolved before the right time. One of the greatest dangers on the spiritual journey is the false sense that one has already reached a certain level of evolution. This can happen because the ego seeks validation and recognition. When we begin to feel the first positive effects of spiritual practice, such as greater calm, synchronicities, or even energetic perceptions, the ego can latch onto these experiences and make us believe we have already achieved something grand. A slight awakening can be interpreted as complete enlightenment. An energetic perception can be mistaken for a spiritual power. A successful intuition can lead us to believe that we know everything. These beliefs are extremely harmful because they create a disconnection from the truth. Spiritual evolution is a continuous process that requires humility and relentless work. Thinking that we are already ready prevents us from continuing to learn and opens us up to serious mistakes. The danger of dark paths. When the ego takes control, it leads us into dangerous territory, where the search for truth is replaced by the pursuit of power, validation, or control. This can lead us down dark paths. Spiritual manipulation. Using knowledge to gain advantages over others, whether emotionally, materially, or energetically. Spiritual arrogance. Feeling superior to other seekers, disregarding each person's unique journey. Disconnection from the source. Believing that we are self-sufficient and no longer need divine or universal guidance. Unbalanced practices. Exploring spiritual practices without proper respect or preparation, opening doors to challenging energies. These deviations not only distance us from spiritual growth, but can also bring profound consequences to our emotional, mental, and even physical lives. How can we prevent the ego from dominating the journey? Practice humility consistently. Humility is the foundation of every true spiritual journey. Recognize that regardless of what you have learned or experienced, there are still infinite levels of evolution to reach. Although you are part of a vast beach, always remember that you are just a grain of sand among many others. Every day, remind yourself that you are a learner. Repeat to yourself, I am an eternal student of the universe. Keep your focus on serving others. Spirituality is not a path to gain power or recognition, but to serve others with compassion and love. Everything you send out to the universe and to other beings returns to you. It is in giving that we receive. By helping others, the ego loses its strength, and you align yourself with the universal energies. Dedicate part of your time to altruistic actions without expecting anything in return. Question your intentions. Always ask yourself, am I doing this to feed my ego or to connect with the whole? This constant reflection can prevent you from going astray. Try to always run everything you are doing or saying through the 3 sieves. First, whether it is and gives you a good feeling or not. Second, whether it is something that will help you evolve. Third, whether it will contribute to the evolution of the whole. Before sharing anything about your spiritual journey, ask yourself, what is my true intention in doing this? Practice self-observation. Learn to identify when the ego is trying to take control. This requires practice and honesty with yourself. At the end of the day, make a sincere and conscious assessment. Meditate daily with a focus on self-observation. Ask yourself, what in my behavior or thinking is being guided by the ego? Seek mentors and communities. One way to avoid the ego's pitfalls is to surround yourself with experienced mentors and spiritual communities that can offer feedback and guidance. Choose groups, teachers, or individual mentors who emphasize humility and service, not those who promise power or quick recognition. Accept challenges with gratitude. The ego resists discomfort, but challenges are fundamental for spiritual evolution. Face each difficulty as an opportunity for growth. Every situation is always a chance to climb one more step, to learn something new on your path, and it will always be this way. The greater your evolution, the higher the step will be. That's why we should be grateful for all of life's difficulties, because we are the ones who chose them. When something doesn't go as planned, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? The truth of the spiritual journey. The true spiritual journey is not about accumulating knowledge, power, or status, but about dissolving the barriers that separate us from the divine. This requires a constant detachment from preconceived ideas, the humility to recognize our limitations, and the courage to face the illusions created by the ego. Spiritual progress is neither linear nor fast. It happens in layers. With each new level, it reveals more of what we need to work on. Thinking that we have already reached fulfillment is like looking at the top of a mountain and believing we are already there, when in reality we are only at the first step of the climb. The choice to walk in the light. The spiritual journey is a call to the light, but it is also an invitation to constant vigilance. The ego, when left unchecked, can lead us astray and take us down dark paths, undoing all our progress. However, by cultivating humility, service to others, and self-observation, we can navigate these challenges and continue to grow. Remember, the true spiritual master is not the one who proclaims powers or wisdom, but the one who, in silence, acknowledges their smallness before the universe and their connection with the whole. And now that you are about to begin your journey, if you prefer to have this book in physical format, you can find it on Amazon in several languages. The link will be in the description. See you soon.